Tickets are on sale now at bostonwrestling.com for our 20th anniversary Back to the 80s WrestleFest, Saturday, November the 13th at Memorial Hall in Melrose, Mass. Wrestling fans, we've told you that we have a new Tuesday night coming for you for our 20th anniversary beginning September 7th when Boston Wrestling MWF goes extreme. Sunday night, August the 29th, one of the rotating superstars joining us will be former ECW World Champion Justin Credible, coming to MWF Studios for the first time for Wrestling Insider's Extreme tapings, plus a live episode and cyber autograph signing. Joining New Jack, Justin Credible brings a brand new edge to Tuesday nights. Interested in joining us live? Boston Wrestling Patreon family members can join us for free. For information, visit patreon.com/Boston Wrestling. Fans anywhere in the world can join us for the live episode and cyber autograph signing. For more, visit bostonwrestling.com. Wrestling fans, it's time to rock. WWE legend Marty Jannetty of the Rockers returns for 3 big nights, Wednesday, September the 1st through Friday, September the 3rd. Marty will be taping historical Wrestling Insider episodes, live specials, and cyber autograph signings. Support wrestling superstars. Pre-order autographed 8x10s now over at bostonwrestling.com. This September, get your sunglasses ready. It's time to party with Marty.
She fall out. He would call the other wrestler, hey man, I got some ass up here. Y'all come on up and get yourself. Here you got this girl laying on the bed. Don't even know where the hell she at. Guys taking the turns on her. I have seen that.
Gang rape.
Just
gang rape.
That have went on in wrestling for decades. Decades until Vince Jr. took over. It was in the 80s. I have seen women get raped many times. Many times. Many times.
This is Mick Foley.
This is Harley Race.
This is Shelton Benjamin.
This is Mr. Wonderful Paul Orndorff.
This is the Monster Abyss.
And this is Daniel Bryan.
This is JBL, and you're watching the MWF.
Be there live.
Wrestling fans around the corner, around the world, welcome to another installment of Wrestling Insiders at Your House. I am Dan Marotti here on this fine Tuesday night after WWE NXT. We hope you are well wherever you may be. For the second week in a row, we're doing an episode we really never wanted to do. We'd rather be hyping up that Tony Atlas was coming back to the studio or that he was going to be appearing at our 20th anniversary Back to the 80s live event and fan fest on Saturday, November the 13th at Memorial Hall here in Melrose, which, funny enough, Tony was partially paid for the event already to be part of from the money that he stole from us. You know, there are fans out there that loved Tony Atlas, the wrestling persona. They loved his physique, they loved his moves, they loved his interviews. They want to believe that everything that he says that comes out of his mouth is the truth, even if the sky is red and the grass is blue. I don't understand that lack of common sense. I think last week's episode certainly raised many questions about his credibility, his honesty, his character, his integrity, but yet he continues to cling to these two lowlives that do the talk show in Long Island that purposely got him drunk, that had him trying to say I was trying to steal his Social Security check, which I don't think is humanly possible. But instead of asking Tony the hard questions that we presented, these two sunglasses at night individuals continued their attack on me, which is fine. We could waste time trading insults, but instead we decided to have a very classy individual with us tonight. Someone that has nothing to do with pro wrestling. I don't think she wants anything to do with pro wrestling, but it was certainly blown away when she found Tony's internet attack on her online that she had never seen, which led to her and I communicating for the first time. Fans, I introduce to you the daughter of Tony's lovely wife, Malaika. Did I say it right?
Malaika.
Malaika, yes. I'm sorry. All right, I'll get it right on the fifth try. Don't worry. How is the world treating you today, my friend?
Very good. It's a nice, beautiful Sunday here in Hawaii, and it's good. Just getting my day going.
Now, your background, just to let folks know a little bit about you, were you actually born in Germany or were you born in the U.S.?
I was born in the U.S. I was born in New York City. Mm-hmm.
That's right. I remember Tony mentioning that your mom spent time in New York City. Okay. Before we get into the obvious 500-pound elephant in the room, One thing we would always do when Tony was here, we'd do the check-in. How is your mom doing right now?
Well, I don't really know, to be honest with you. We've been estranged since about November.
Oh,
Things had gotten very, I guess, contentious on her end. And she said a lot of incredibly hurtful things, which I didn't understand at the time where they were coming from until I saw the interview last week with Tony that you had on YouTube. And the same things were coming out of his mouth that my mother yelled at me and spewed at me about on Thanksgiving.
really?
And so, yeah, so now I know the origins of this horrible attack that my mother had on me. And it was very sad to hear, her say these things to me, and I had no idea where they were coming from. But now I do, and it's all very shocking, actually.
And
So,
and you saying that, it makes me feel bad that we gave him the platform to attack someone needlessly, and that it's created this rift between you and your mom, where that you haven't had communicated now. And you said November. That's going on 9 months at this point.
yeah, yeah,
Wow.
we had a really good, well, what I, had deemed to be a very good relationship. And all of a sudden, it just changed without any warning, actually. My mother now at this point, she was starting to suffer from dementia from the stroke.
Hmm.
So, it just seems to me like Tony was over there, spewing his hatred about me. And, that fed over into the relationship that we had.
And
So,
really, outside of the hospital folk, that was pretty much the only, according to Tony, the only form of real communication she had to the outside world was him.
hmm
When he was able to go before
yeah,
coronavirus, he claimed that he would be there most of the day after his job at the YMCA. And then I do know that they were on the phone regularly because we'd see it
hmm
here at the TV studio sometimes. So I'm
yeah.
sorry that our platform created this rift. I had no idea. I didn't even really knew you existed at that point. But Tony is a man that likes to talk, as I'm sure you've come to learn over the
Yeah.
years. But let me ask you this: you know, I don't know what your history with Tony exactly was, but why do you think Tony did it? Why do you think he chose to take a video platform to attack you so maliciously?
I don't really know why he chose that moment to decide to bash me the way he did.
Hmm.
He's never liked me.
Hmm.
Let's put it that way. We have had a very contentious, mostly non-existent relationship for the better of 30 years.
Hmm.
And I just never wanted to deal with him because he, had acted in certain ways that I wanted nothing to do with the man.
Hmm. And what,
I want even less to do with him now.
how was he at that point when you just originally came across him in life that was a turnoff to you? Was it a
Wow.
personality thing? Was it actions? Was it?
Well, no, his reputation actually preceded him.
And what do you mean by
Um,
that?
well, I'm going to break a few hearts here when I tell this story, but Tony has this ongoing story, this origin story that, we found him under a park bench, that he was freezing to death in the cold. I watched one of your interviews where he actually said that we chipped ice off of him with knives.
Yes.
And none of that is true. None of this was ever true. My mother met him at Foodland in Auburn,
Which I'm going to
and
guess is a supermarket.
is a supermarket. She met him at the supermarket, and my mother and I, we lived next door to each other, in Auburn, and she came home one day, and she said, hey, I, met this guy, he seems really nice, and he's going to come over for dinner. And I was like, okay, good for you. And she told me his name, and I had heard that name before, and I became very concerned. I told her that that wasn't a good idea to have him over. I told him I told her that, he was known to be the bodyguard for the drug dealers in Lewiston.
Mm-hmm.
And I told her this isn't a safe person to be around. She poo-pooed me. She didn't believe me, and she went on and, you know, had this man over for dinner. I stayed away from that situation. I kept trying to tell her, that this wasn't a good idea, but she did not listen. She did not believe me because he was such a nice guy. And they had a very quick relationship. Before I knew it, they were married. And then things changed. He suddenly became the controlling person. He
Mm-hmm.
started to control things. And he started to control my mother. And which I didn't understand because she's not generally the kind of person that's controlled by other people.
And
So,
that's how Tony had always described your mom, was that, she was a tough German woman, that she would put her foot down when she wanted to put her foot down. And but you make it sound like when she was around Tony, she almost kind of turned into a different Monica.
yeah. Suddenly she wasn't allowed to see her grandchild.
Oh, wow.
She wasn't supposed to see me. If I came around, it was almost like, it wasn't a relaxed situation.
Mm-hmm.
It was always very tense. And that actually started, I get ahead of myself because that actually started because of an incident, because of Tony, that he suddenly did not want me around anymore. There was one day that I went to see my mom, and I had brought my son, who was 2 years old at the time, with me, and he invited us in. It was her apartment. We invited us in. He was sitting in his lazy boy in front of the television, and my mom was, I think, still at work because she worked at Clover Manor. I also worked there, but I worked night shift.
Mm-hmm.
But I went over to visit with her, and he said she would be home soon.
Oh, so your mom wasn't even home at the time.
Wasn't even home at the
I
time.
gotcha. Okay.
And so I sat down in this, we called it the cubby. It's actually was like a little bench, but the wall receded back almost like a makeshift type of closet
Mm-hmm.
that was by the front windows of the apartment. And that was about 25 feet in from the front door. So we're sitting there. My son's playing around with some toys. And I look over, and Tony has his hands in his pants,
Oh,
and he's
God.
masturbating
Oh.
himself in front of me and my 2-year-old son. And I, kind of placed my son as far back into the cubby as I could get him. And I just looked out the window because at that point, in order to get out of that apartment, I would have had to pass him and run 25 feet across with my 2-year-old in my arms.
So
And I was terrified.
there was no way out unless you
There was
went near
no,
him.
yeah,
Oh,
I was
my God.
terrified.
Oh, my
And
God.
I looked out the windows and, just tried to keep my son in his spot so he wouldn't see what was going on. And I kept looking out the windows, and I just tried to just ignore the whole thing, hoping that this man would not get up and attack me. And, after a while, things got quiet, and I happened to kind of look peripheral vision, and he had fallen asleep in the chair. And I grabbed my son, and I got out of there as fast as I could.
He actually fell
And
asleep?
he actually fell asleep in the damn chair. And I got out as fast as I could.
Well, thank
I
God that
grabbed
it
my
didn't
son
turn
and
into a
out.
bigger situation.
Well, I was
What it
frightened
could
it
have
would.
led to. Sure. Who wouldn't? Who wouldn't? Especially
I
with
mean,
a
who
little
does
kid
that?
on top
Who
of
does
you.
that?
Yeah.
Yeah. No normal human being does something like that. And I ended up telling my mother about it. It caused, I guess, an argument between them. But my mother never left him. She, for some reason, stayed. I guess it was fear for herself at that point. And from that point on, our relationship, Tony and myself, was completely done. He didn't like me for
Oh,
telling my mother. I couldn't stand him for what he had done. And it was just, very, very cool going from that point on. I want nothing more to do with the man.
Just
So,
despicable what he did. But never
hmm
mind the fact with you there, but with
yeah,
a little kid playing with toys.
exactly.
I mean,
He has no respect. He has no scruples. He's like a wild animal.
well,
You know, he has.
if you go back to that video last week, one thing that we have done hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of interviews with Tony, but one that someone had pointed out in the studio was, remember when he talked about all the gang rapes that he used to
Yes.
witness, and just instead of actually trying to stop it or call the police, he almost made it sound like he sat back and had popcorn and watched.
Well, that's exactly what he's done by his own admission, because he did it to my mother on her wedding day.
No, what do you mean?
He forced her to have sex with someone, the one of the promoters, while he sat and watched. My mother didn't tell me that until years later.
Oh my God! One of
Okay.
a wrestling promoter?
Yeah, one
Oh
of the
my!
promoters. And I was so disgusted. I mean, I did not understand. I still don't really understand how my mother could stay with him. I mean, my mother had gone through so much in her life, and maybe it was all the abuse that she'd gone through with other men in her life previously to Tony,
Mm-hmm.
and so she, told me she just, didn't really know what to do. She was afraid, and if he would do this to his wife on her wedding day, on the day that he's supposed to be um, her husband, if he would masturbate in front of his now stepdaughter and grandchild, what else would he be capable of doing? I have no, he has brought so much pain and disgust to my little family. I can't even anymore. I just cannot even wrap my mind around it. I have tried to keep in contact with my mother. I've offered her to live with me
We heard that
more than
last week. Yeah,
once,
yeah.
several times. I've offered to pay for her plane tickets to come see me. She wasn't even allowed to visit her granddaughter. My youngest child, she is now 15. But the stroke is the first time when we went to Maine, was the first time that my mother was able to see her grandchild.
Really?
My daughter was 12. So, and she'd never met a grandmother.
I wish you had the ability to feel what I feel right now. I've known Tony since 1993. I considered him to be a friend. He has stated many times on the talk show that we've done, I was his only friend during the virus that offered to open my wallet and help him with the mortgage and advance him money for so on and so forth. But I've heard the phrase before, and I believe it to be true. You really don't know someone until you live under the same roof as them. And what you're sharing with us today, even just the lies about the origin of your mom's life with him, being frozen to a box under a bench.
What a joke.
Maybe just to backtrack just a little bit, when your mom did meet him at this supermarket, was he homeless at that point at all, or?
My understanding was that he was bouncing, from place to place, and he was homeless, in essence. Whether he slept on a park bench or not, or under it, I have no idea if that is actually true or not. But I know it wasn't how we met him. I know that's not at all truth at all. Never was.
In another I'm sorry.
Oh no, go ahead.
In another episode, I'm going to guess you didn't watch, Tony said when he met you guys, like you said, he met your mom and he was under the bench and he get, why are you sitting on my house, or whatever the phrase was that he used. And then he claimed that you went back with your mom and helped get him out of the box, brought him home, bathed him, and he went into shock. Then your mom and you had to bring him to the hospital for several days where he was in some kind of a coma. Is there any truth to that story?
There is no truth to any of that.
No.
There's no truth to any of that. I know. Okay, my mother is probably 5'5". I'm 5'8". In the snowstorm, we lived in Auburn. Lewiston, the park in Lewiston is about I don't know, 4 to 5 miles away from where we live.
Mm-hmm.
We're, I didn't, th- th- we're going to carry a 300-pound man in a snowstorm 5 miles to our house, put him in a bathtub, and then and he's in a coma.
Instead of
I
just
mean,
calling 911.
right?
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, this makes no sense whatsoever. I mean, why would anybody believe any of this? Tony is a carny. He makes stories. People eat it up, and he makes money off of his lies. I mean, it is just ridiculous, and I don't know how anybody couldn't challenge this before.
Well,
In the story that Tony, uh, a cop friend of his, I heard that interview. A cop friend of his,
mhm.
um, uh, let him use his phone. I'm the cop. Tony came next door to where I lived, and would use my phone to call Vince McMahon.
Oh, you're a
There was no
police.
cop. I'm now a police officer, apparently.
Oh, so you were not a police officer.
No,
Oh, I
was
don't
not a
know what your
police
profession
officer.
was. Okay.
No, police officer was not one of them.
Okay.
And yeah, apparently, you know, I mean, it's just amazing. I mean, my mind is reeling from the lies this man is telling, and people actually believe him. I
And
mean, it is
I hate to
just,
say it, up until February, I believed it hook, line, and sinker too.
yeah, well, I can honestly say that none of this was ever true. None of it.
Well, you
You
have
know,
no reason to come out of the woodwork and create fiction
no,
about Tony. Tony is trying to create a
I,
persona that he can capitalize off of
yeah.
financially and to get sympathy for.
Well, that's exactly it. And, I've kept my mouth shut. I've stayed away. My mother's, been, I mean, my mother and him had no marriage. They had no marriage whatsoever. She left him for a while, but he still wouldn't leave her alone. And, and in some parts, I don't think she wanted him to leave her alone either.
Hmm.
She was very lonely, and she kept telling me that she felt that he protected her somehow,
Hmm.
because of his size and because other men were afraid of him. And she was afraid of men. My mother was very afraid because she had been abused by men since she was 4 years old.
Wow. Well,
So
I don't want to
she,
get too personal into it, but
no,
because Tony.
but this is the mindset,
Hmm.
is what I'm saying. This was her mindset, as to why she stayed with this
Right.
person.
Well, Tony had said on one of the talk shows that, again, not to get too personal, she really was
No.
violently attacked at one point when she was in New York City. So
Hmm.
maybe, the thought of having a very physically impressive human being, if nothing else,
Yes,
almost as her bodyguard, to keep her
exactly.
safe from, the subconscious mind is something I don't think any of us truly understand.
Yeah.
So maybe there was something to that. But another point, again, kind of wanted to backtrack just a little bit to try and
Hmm.
expose Tony's frauds and some of his lies and his contradictions and so on. On one of
Sure.
the shows that Tony did, he claimed that your mom had never seen a black man before she met Tony. And then I found it was hysterical that you yourself are biracial. So either your mom was
Yeah.
blind or that's just another one of Tony's lies.
No, my mother came to the United States because she was in a relationship with a Black American GI.
Hmm.
That was back in the 60s prior to my arrival to this world. And things did not work out when she came here. And so she ended up working in New York
Hmm.
with a couple. And they took her in. She was working with them and as an au pair. And then she met my father. And my father is African American.
Hmm.
And so the idea that my mother, Tony makes my mother look so dumb sometimes. Like she just, like, he found her on Mars, and, my mother was a very intelligent woman. She is not dumb. And, he makes her look helpless. He makes her look stupid. And I resent that. Um, and anyone who would believe that, I mean, There's black people in Germany. My mother had never seen a black person. I mean, give me a break. It's just, I mean, it's just laughable.
I know you said you were kind of familiar with the name Tony Atlas, based upon his quote unquote profession at the time in the late 80s, early 90s, when he was apparently a protector of dealers in the area. At any point, did you ever believe that Tony was a good person or a sincere person?
No,
Never, not even once.
no,
Really?
no. I never trusted him. I never trusted him. I didn't trust him from the time that my mother told me that he was coming over for dinner. I never trusted him.
Did your mom ever have the doubts that you had?
Not until later.
Yeah.
Not until it was, she was already married to him and things had already happened the way they did. She had no idea. My mother didn't follow wrestling. She had other interests. Wrestling wasn't one of them. She didn't keep up with wrestling or sports or, many of the American pastimes. She had no idea who he was.
Well, I tell you, we got quite the response from the phone call that you decided to share with us last week. I think most people with common sense and an open mind would really have a lot of questions after watching what I said, then the call that you shared with us. What got you to the point where you decided, you know what, I think maybe it's a good idea that I record these calls with my mom? What was happening? I know she didn't get into specific details, but she mentioned that she had money that was stolen from her. She said that she never loved Tony. Tony was basically a nuisance and a pest to her life. But what got you in Hawaii to say, you know what, I really need to document what's going on here?
Well, actually, it had nothing to do with my mother.
Oh, okay.
I wasn't recording the calls because I wanted to record anyone in particular. Well, especially not my mother. But in 2011, I had put a call recorder on my phone because I had some problems with my car loan company.
Oh,
I had made a double payment and they didn't attribute my payment correctly, and I could not prove to them that I had given certain instructions to the call center to apply my payment to the next month's payment. So anyways, it had caused me some problems, and I had decided at that point that I was going to put a call recorder on my phone so I would be able to prove what I had to say or what I did say in case something like that happened again. So from one phone to the next, I always uploaded a call recorder. And so it was not a matter of, oh yeah, I want to record my mother. That was never even in my mind. It wasn't until after that I realized I actually had all these phone calls recorded.
So kind of in the moment, you didn't even realize, you weren't even thinking that they were being recorded. You were your mind was focused on this interaction with the car folks.
Yes.
Okay.
It had nothing to do with my mother. And then shortly after that, she had the stroke. So.
Do you have any idea how much money it was that Tony stole from her, and why did he steal it from her?
She told me it was $5,000.
Wow. And
that, that was the money that she had saved from her sewing. And she said that he had stolen it. He had asked her for money, and she said that she couldn't, she didn't have anything to give him at the time. And he wanted his weed and his drugs and his, she used to refer to them as his shoe girls. Ugh. And, shortly after the money was stolen, actually within, a couple days, he suddenly had money.
Yeah.
And
cough.
Out of nowhere. So she was very upset about that. She was very stressed out, and, like I said, they had no marriage. He lives, they bought an apartment building together with 2 units. He lives upstairs.
Have you ever been to that house?
Yes, I yeah.
Well, we're sharing the same vision then. It was an awe, and this was after your mom had the stroke that we were up there, but just
Mhm.
an odd setup altogether. It was almost like, your mom had the bottom floor and he was living
Yes.
up on the top floor by himself.
Yes, they hadn't lived together in years, you
Really?
know? Yeah, yeah, they had not lived together in, I don't know, at least over a decade.
Wow.
Not physically lived together, not since she
They
left
got
him
that
the
house.
first time.
Oh, she left it.
You know,
Okay.
she had left him at one point and she was living in her own apartment.
Hmm.
And then, and that was for at least, almost a little over a decade. And then I guess when they bought the house, he had asked, asked her to take the bottom unit. They did it to save money.
So
Um,
your mother left Tony for over a decade?
yeah, they weren't living
Really?
together.
Oh,
Yeah, she was living in her own apartment
I'd
in
never known
Auburn.
that.
Yeah,
Wow.
yeah. And but he would always, still come over, still make his demands, still take up her time, and that was their relationship. She's a grown woman. I'm not going to tell her what to do.
Right.
It doesn't affect me really one way or the other. I mean, it does knowing what I know and resenting him, but it doesn't affect me in other ways. So, so they moved in together and, he's upstairs, she's downstairs doing her sewing business. And, that was all there was to it. There was no physical relationship that she let me know about because she said that he was homosexual and, or bisexual. And, she was very sad.
Well, geez, I don't even know if this is the right platform for it, but I tell you, a very, very great mutual friend of Tony and I's told us that he and another wrestler down in Georgia were arrested. This is probably circa late 70s for some kind of a cross-dressing incident in a hotel, which I
Oh, wow.
was always kind of an inside joke amongst the guys, but where Tony has been so loose-lipped with some of his creative fiction that he's put online the past 6 months and his contradictions, I guess it's fair to trade a barb every now and then, but I wouldn't be surprised. I mean, there was, God, another story about him that was known within the wrestlers that I don't want to name the name of the man because he's involved with WWE right now, but Tony went into his hotel room, and then when the time Tony left the hotel room, the poor very, very young at this point, and I'm not saying underage, I don't know that
Yeah.
to be true either way, but a young guy,
Mm.
tough, pro wrestler, quote unquote tough guy, he was in the bed shivering in fear from whatever happened when Tony shut that door to the time Tony left. So, obviously, what would the conclusion be, especially amongst
Yeah.
pro wrestlers, as to what went on during the duration when they were alone in that room? And, just some of the strange off-the-cuff remarks he'd make about, feet and things like that. If it is true, it is what it is. I mean, as long as he's
Yeah.
not causing anyone any harm, it is what it is. But when you cause someone harm with it, that's when it turns into a problem. And it seems like there was a lot of harm, caused. Just that wedding story to me literally has me sick to my stomach that you told me from earlier on, because I met your mom one time. It was back in June of 1994 at the venue where we're having our big 20th anniversary event in November. And I don't know why she came with him, because she very, very seldom would come with him on a wrestling trip, maybe because it was an afternoon show or something like that. But I remember it being very nice. I always liked to say hello to her when Tony would talk to her on the phone, when they talk at the studio. For Christmas time, I don't know if Tony ever gave them to her, but we got her some candies because, the hospital life can be a depressing one, as I know from the injuries that I've gone through. So I can certainly empathize with what your mom has been going through. But, I never knew this. I obviously never knew this side to the story, or we probably wouldn't be having the conversation right now. But one thing that Tony has always stressed is that as far as the women, the walking, the foot walkers, however you want to call them, I don't know if you've ever seen the video that he wanted us to share to try and get people to understand it. I don't know how you understand watching a WWE and bodybuilding Hall of Famer licking the bottom of a shoe, but Was it something your mom had no problem with?
My mother had nothing but problem with it. She
Really?
was so angry. My mother was so angry about the whole situation, and there
So
was
more
nothing she could
lies.
do about it. Yeah,
More
she
lies.
was not okay with this. She would get, you know, sometimes, I mean, there was one woman that tried to hit her with a car once
One of
because of Tony's
the
one of the
walkers?
yeah,
Oh,
tried to hit him with a car, hit her with a car once because, there was jealousy going on. I mean, it was disgusting. He was looking at my feet. I didn't even feel comfortable going around the man with shoes on. You know,
yeah. I mean, I
it
guess
was it was awful.
the safest way, according to him, would for you to have been barefoot because for him,
Yeah.
whatever the I don't know if you ever saw the episode when we actually had an acclaimed sports psychiatrist, Dr. David Reese, with us on the show, and he
Mm,
tried to. I don't know if diagnose is the right word because we were on a television show, but just maybe to try and explain to Tony a little bit about what the heck was going on upstairs about that, why
yeah.
he enjoyed this or needed it, or it was almost like Popeye getting his spinach, the way he
Yeah.
made it
Well,
sound. But so your mom
yeah.
did have an issue with him having
Of
these women
course.
around.
What woman wouldn't have an issue with something like that? Of course she did.
I'll
And
tell you this, and again, this is someone that considered Tony a good friend. I always found that to be a little odd that he would say that your mom just. I couldn't imagine my spouse saying, well, you know what, when you go grocery shopping or go into the mall, I'm going to have someone come over and walk on me and kick me in the face repeatedly. Have you ever
yeah.
seen any of the bizarre footage of it?
No, I don't want to.
Well, I won't include it in
No.
this show then, my dear God. But
I'll pass.
I have. It blew me away the first time I ever saw it. At first, I thought I've actually seen the walking in person. We've gone to wrestling themed conventions before, and Tony literally he'd lay down and these women would just walk on him,
Yeah.
and people would
Hmm.
be in shock and they'd be taking pictures. Some would be laughing, some would be weirded out by it. But the
Yeah.
home videos that he shared, that I don't know if he filmed it or the woman walker, I mean, this was literally violent. It was
Yeah.
violent how hard they were kicking him in his
Yeah.
face. And then
Yeah. My mother was concerned about that.
and you said
She.
there was some jealousy with one of these, at least 1 foot woman
Oh yeah.
that your mom was around.
Yeah.
Jesus, my dear God.
My mother was concerned he would come. She'd tell me that he would come home with bruises and welts all over his body from the stepping and the kicking and the shoe prints that were welted into his skin. She was just she used to tell him, one of these days you're going to die. You know, they're going to do this wrong and you're going to die. And she was very concerned about that. It was a very strange dynamic. It really was. The whole thing was just very strange between the two of them.
With at
And
least what he shared with
yeah,
us, this is a woman that was very, very well built for a female, obviously not the size of a man, but she
mhm,
was kicking him in his face as
mhm,
hard as she could. I mean,
yeah.
just it
Well,
almost sounded like people running up and down a basketball court. The way it's the foot hitting him in the face, and then when it was done, he was euphoric. It was
yeah.
again, I have never seen anything like it.
I
Um,
think, my own opinion of his situation and why he does this is because he knows he does so much bad. Maybe that's his way of atoning for it, you know,
maybe
because he has done so many horrible things. And that's the only logical explanation that I would have for that. The explanation that he gave is absolutely ridiculous, that he wants to liberate women, because the way he treats women
yeah.
is an absolute joke. I mean, it is pitiful.
With your story from when you had your little one over there at the house,
Oh yeah, it gets worse, or it gets just as bad.
it
Yeah.
happened. Did it happen more than once?
No, no,
Oh,
no.
okay,
He
okay.
that was a one-time deal. I didn't even want to.
You weren't going to put yourself in that position again.
Yeah, there
Yeah.
was it was a very long time before I visited again.
Did
And then it was not being left alone with him for sure.
Did Tony ever try and go above and beyond to try and be nice to you after that? To try and, I mean, I don't know if there's a way you could ever make up for doing something like that, but did he at least even try and, I don't know if fake it is the right way to put it, but did he ever
Yeah.
try and be kind to you?
Sure.
He did.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah,
Okay.
yeah. He tried. He faked it. He was nice sometimes. It was very bipolar.
Mhm.
You never knew when he was going to either be nice or blow his top. You just never knew.
So you saw an
So,
angry side of Tony.
oh, did I ever? Oh, yeah. I remember one day I was sitting with my mother in the living room in the apartment that they had
Hmm.
um, before she moved out. And I don't know, I was talking to her about some personal stuff, and he came in the room and started screaming at me, just bellowing. And we weren't talking about him, we weren't talking to him. He was just losing his absolute temper. I mean, if his head could have popped off, it would have. It was just, and I was just in shock. I was just like, what is this man blubbering on about? you know so I ended up leaving, and it was again a long time before I visited. It was just, it was ridiculous. It was just such a dysfunctional relationship between my mother and Tony and myself. It was just ugly.
Well, the story about the theft and the $5,000 was despicable, but I had no idea that they were, I don't know if separated is the right word, but at least not
Mhm.
together for a decade until they
Yeah,
bought that the yellow. I'm gonna guess the yellow house.
yeah, the Yellow House.
Okay. Wow. Wow. Gee, and for me to be this blown away that has known Tony since 1993 when I was a freshman in high school, I just don't understand how there are some fans that just look at this like it's this attack on him. I don't think you or I woke up today saying, geez, let's go slander Tony Atlas and make him look bad. But we've had these horrible experiences with the man, and yet he continues to use these online platforms to bury people needlessly. From what you've
Well,
explained to me, can you think of any reason why Tony Atlas would have a reason to dislike you?
because I told my mother the truth,
Hmm.
because I knew I wasn't starstruck by him from when I met him.
You didn't care.
I didn't care. He held absolutely no interest to me.
Hmm.
I'm not interested in someone's star power.
Hmm.
That doesn't make them a better person to me because they, have been famous or know famous people. I couldn't care less. If you're a good person, then I'll recognize that in you. But if you're a bad person, I will equally recognize that in you. And to me, he was a bad person, and I could see he was a bad person. So, he did appreciate my honesty with my mother, and he didn't appreciate the fact that I never saw him as anything special.
When your mom left him for such a long period of time, did she ever talk about coming to live with you, in such a beautiful part of the world and enjoy her golden years that way around you, her
Well, at
grandkids? I would think that would be kind of a nice ending to the story.
well, at the time, I was still living in Maine. I
Oh,
lived
you were
in Maine
still in
until
Maine. Okay.
2000.
Okay.
Yeah, I
I'm
lived in
sorry.
Maine until 2004.
I got you.
And I had gotten married and left the state and hadn't seen my mother until 2019.
Jeez. 15 years. Wow.
Hmm. Yeah.
And let me ask you this. How did you learn, of your mother's situation? Did Tony actually give you a call or a text?
Yeah,
Would you communicate with
actually,
him like that, or?
yeah, Tony, well, we didn't communicate prior to that. It was just my mother and I talking.
Mhm.
But yeah, he called me. He called me to let me know my mother had a stroke, and it was very surprising, um, scary. I didn't know, from one minute to the next if she was going to make it. It
Mhm.
was it was a very stressful, scary time for our family.
Yeah,
And
I do. And, again, the Tony that still somewhere in my brain that I know and I like and I care about. I remember how worked up he was about it. For him to miss appearances and for him to, you know, it was chaotic for him in his
mhm,
own way. Whether you love him, whether
sure.
you hate him, for him,
Sure.
he didn't really know what to do. He said he was cooking dinner for her, and he said,
Mhm.
Monica, it's dinner time, and she just walked out of that bedroom. I don't know if it was the second or the first floor, and she just kaboom went down. And the funny thing was, at least Tony claims, he had appearances set up that wound up being canceled. Thank God they wound up being
Yeah.
canceled, and that for better or worse, whether you love him or hate him,
Right.
at least he was
Exactly.
home when it happened.
Yes.
You know, my
Yes.
God, if she was ever stuck there alone.
Yeah.
So, in that one instance, thank God for Tony Atlas being around.
Yeah.
You know,
I
well,
I
God
agree.
only knows what the conversation we could be having right now.
Mhm.
How long was it before you decided to come and see her? Was it immediate? Did you want to wait and see what the doctors were going to say?
Well, I had spoken with the doctors at the hospital, and they told me what was happening, and I kind of kept close touch with them, and trying to find a way to get there.
Mhm.
So it's like getting the money together to get there
Not cheap.
and to fly out. I had to fly myself and my daughter out there. It wasn't one ticket, it was two,
Hmm.
two round trip tickets. So it wasn't cheap by any means.
No.
But we managed and we made it out there. And Tony had said that we could stay in my mother's apartment.
Oh.
And, you know, I had spoken, my mother was at the rehab facility at the nursing home. And, you know, I was cautious. I was very cautious.
Hey,
Tony,
even
of
if you locked
course,
it, he would have had a key.
yeah, I
Yeah.
was, yeah, I was very cautious, with my daughter being there as well. It
Oh
wasn't a
my
very
God.
comfortable
Yeah. Right. Right.
situation.
Right. Right.
And, I felt, I don't know, it felt dangerous. It had a dangerous feeling to it, even under the circumstances. I did not feel comfortable, with him around or, having my daughter around him.
Mhm.
I had to explain a few things to her that I never wanted to explain to a 12-year-old.
Oh
But,
God. Yeah. Yeah. You
I had
had
to
to.
kind of
You
be,
had to.
yeah, I had to be, prep her. And, things were okay. And I went to visit my mother, and she had expressed to me that she wanted me to take things out of the house.
Mhm.
She told me, I want you to, take my stuff, grab my things, and, send them to your house. And so I did. That's what she told me to do, and I did what my mother told me. And,
And that was something I definitely was going to bring up, because I do
mhm,
remember Tony bashing you about that he almost made it
mhm,
sound like you were Joe Pesci and Daniel Stern in Home Alone, going through all your mother's
yeah,
stuff trying to steal it, the wet bandits. But so your mom asked you to take whatever it was that you removed
yes,
from the home and take it back with you to Hawaii, as she found it to be,
yes,
uh, I don't know if it had sentimental value or great financial value, or something that maybe
no,
Tony could have sold for
n-
foot women or
no,
something like that. Or,
yeah,
but your mom
no,
specifically said to you she would have liked you to take
yes,
that.
yes, she specifically stated she wanted me to take the things out of her house. She wanted me to move her out, which is what I did.
And
And
did Tony know you were doing it as it was happening, or did you
no,
wait for
he
him
did
to be
not.
okay?
No, it was not. My mother and I have this relationship and always have had that if she tells me to pack up and go, we pack up and go. That I
Hmm.
do what she says. And under the stressful situation, I didn't think twice about it.
Hmm.
I just said, okay, you're ready to come. You're ready to, when you get a little bit better. I figured, she was going to go to Hawaii and I would take care of her here and, she would be okay. She finally decided that she wants to leave him, and so I went and I packed up her things. Her things consisted of family photos, uh, pictures that she had crafted, some of her craft stuff, a broken embroidery machine,
Hmm.
and her sewing machine and her laptop that had family photos on it. And this was the massive haul that he makes it sound like, we've just, she had no jewelry or anything like
That's what I
that.
was just going to say.
She,
It wasn't
I mean,
tens of
I
thousands
mean,
of dollars worth of diamonds that you were
no,
pocketing.
no, no, no. I mean, my mother crafted jewelry like out of beads.
She made
you
a
know.
beautiful necklace, cross for
Yeah,
Tony that he would wear on the
yeah,
show. I actually like that very much.
yeah.
I don't know
She
if you
loved to
ever
do
noticed it, but it
crafting.
was beautiful.
No, I never watched Tony or any of his stuff. It
Or
wasn't
I
of
don't know, maybe
interest.
just even if he had it on, and you may have come
Yeah.
across him when you were visiting from Hawaii. It was just a beautiful
Oh, I
cross
wasn't.
that she made for him.
Yeah, she was very talented in her crafting, and she kept that's how she kept herself busy making pillows and crafting jewelry out of beads and crocheting. These were the things that kept her sane during this marriage. And so she asked me to grab all of this stuff, and I did, thinking that, she was going to move with me and I would take care of her and everything would be okay. This was where she led me to believe.
And this is
And so I
just
did.
so the fans know, this is
Twen-
2019, shortly after she had the stroke.
yes,
Okay.
yes, yeah. So, and at that point, I had gotten in contact with a dear friend of mine, and she invited me to stay with her during this time.
In Maine?
So, which is in Maine,
Okay.
which is what I did.
Mhm.
So, I had removed, what was removable, what she had asked me to get. The rest was, old furniture and I brought her clothes. I packed up clothes for her and I brought it to the nursing home,
Mhm.
because she didn't have anything to wear, just those hospital gowns.
Yeah.
So I brought some, personal stuff. I brought some music for her. I brought
Oh,
some,
that's nice.
CDs that she had, music that she liked to listen to. I brought her clothes. I brought her personal effects. And when I got to the nursing home, Tony was sitting in the chair in the corner, glaring at me because his neighbor apparently told him what I was doing, that I had moved things out.
Oh.
So he had gone to the nursing home and he was waiting for me, and I was like, okay, yeah, so what? So I bring in the suitcase of my mother's things, and he goes, well, what did you do that for? She doesn't need all that. And I'm like, what do you mean she doesn't need all that? She needs her clothes. I mean, even if she doesn't leave the nursing home, she still needs to be dressed, and she had nothing. And so it kind of escalated from there. My sister, my mother's other daughter from Germany,
Mhm.
was on the cell phone, on my cell phone, and she had wanted to speak with my mother. And so, I was holding the cell phone for my mother because she was paralyzed. And Tony got angry because I was doing that, and he slapped the phone out of my hand,
Wow.
and it landed on my mother's chest, and I, was just totally taken aback by that. And
He just
you
didn't
know,
want your mom to talk to your sister in Germany for some reason, or?
yeah, I don't know, he just wanted to escalate the situation. And um, you know, I told him, I said, she asked me to do this. She asked me to take her things, because he was getting, upset about me taking the things. And he looked at my mother. Now, my mother's, like I said, 5'5", maybe 5'3" now because of everything.
Mhm.
She's laying in her hospital bed, paralyzed, okay, looking straight up, and he's screaming at her face. He is screaming at her,
At your mom?
at my mother in her hospital bed, bellowing and
Wh-
screaming at her. Did you tell her to do that? And he kept repeating himself over and over and over again. And my mother's, she was just staring dead at him, and she looked so frightened, so
Oh my
tiny.
God.
And he was just, this huge man just screaming at this little woman in the bed, and she didn't move a muscle. She was just staring. Her eyes were wide open, just staring at him. And she said, yeah, and I ran to the front desk and I asked them to remove him. I said, listen, you got to get this guy out of here. So I, had them come in and ask him to leave. And the nursing staff was afraid of him because of
Sure.
the way he is. They were
He's a
terrified.
big,
These
big
are,
guy. Yeah.
yeah, there's no men on staff. The security guy was a buck 50, and so, he's pounding around and screaming and hollering and swearing. And he finally leaves and he calls the cops. He calls the cops and accuses me of stealing.
Oh.
And the police, came and interviewed my mother, and
Well, she's in her hospital bed with
while she's in her
paralyzed?
paralyzed
Oh
in her
my
hospital bed.
God.
And so the police, got her, side of the story, I guess, and she confirmed that that I had taken the stuff at her behest. And he was not allowed to come to the nursing home for a while. And but during that time, before he even left, okay, I'm getting ahead of myself. Before he even left, my daughter was sitting in the
Is she witnessed all
waiting
this
room.
too?
Oh no!
Your daughter?
My daughter. Before I went into my mother's room, my daughter, had kind of broken off away from me
Oh, okay.
and gone
Good. Well, at
into
least she didn't have to see it.
Oh no, she had her run in with Tony. She was sitting in the waiting room. They had like it's like a little family room,
Mhm.
and she was working. She decided she was going to work on a puzzle. She's 12 years old.
Sure, sure.
She's a brittle diabetic, 12 years old. You know, nice little kid. And she was minding her business. She didn't want to be involved with any of this drama. This is the first time she's meeting her grandmother and this monster. And, she didn't want to be part of it. And I don't blame her. And I didn't want her to be a part of it either.
Mhm.
And apparently, while I was still in with my mother before he left, after all this hullabaloo, he goes in and sees my daughter by the elevators in the room. And he starts intimidating my daughter, screaming at her, telling her that we should lose everything, that I'm a monster, that that I deserve every bad thing that happens to me. And he's inches away from my daughter's face, screaming at her.
Really?
Yeah.
My God.
And then he broke the puzzle that she was working on.
He broke her puzzle?
He broke the puzzle she was working on. And she came. I mean, actually, she didn't even come to me. I went down to find her, and he was standing by the elevators at this point.
Mhm.
And I ran in, and she ran to me, and he was bellowing, and there were men at the elevator waiting to go down with their families, and he was just standing there bellowing, about how I was fat, and the same things, just repeating the same things,
He said you were
that
fat?
yeah,
Was it
fat,
overweight?
and nobody wants to have sex with me. I haven't
He
seen
said
this
this at
man
the hospital?
at the hospital, and
my.
I'm like, why do you care who has sex with me? Why do you care what I look like? I'm 50 years old, 49 at the time. Why do you care? Why is this any of your business? I'm a grown woman, living my life that you know nothing about. Who are you to talk to me that way? And he's just bellowing and going off, and I just shielded my daughter and ran past him with her, and and that was the last we saw of him, for quite a while, so that was the end of that, I guess. It was a very traumatic experience for my daughter. It was a traumatic experience for me and my mother
Oh
especially.
my.
And and the staff at the nursing home,
Yeah,
it was a
exactly,
zoo.
right?
It was
I'm sure they weren't used to that in Auburn,
no,
Maine.
no, it was a circus. It was an embarrassing circus. And and even through all of that, there was a nurse's aide that actually walked into the room and asked if she could get his autograph.
Oh.
I was just like blown away by the whole thing. I'm like, are you kidding me?
In the middle of the argument or before?
No, after the argument. I was just like, are you kidding me? I mean, this is how starstruck some people are.
That's
that
what
no matter
amazes
what
me.
he does,
No matter what he does, no matter what he says, there are some people, because they know him from TV and they enjoyed the things he did as a wrestler, they'll believe absolutely anything that comes out of his mouth. He could say it's 2024 and some people would believe it. And I'm blown away by that lack of common sense, I guess.
Yeah.
is
And
this whole
so,
nonsense has gone on our end. I mean, I know you
right.
watched the episode that we put together last week,
Mm.
where I spoke a little bit before we played the phone call. And I mean, I just don't understand how anyone with an ounce of common sense or intelligence could not, even if they didn't believe everything I was saying, at least question the character and integrity of what Tony was claiming. But there are some people that believe it hook, line, and sinker. And you think to
Yeah.
yourself, my God, what's on the other end of the computer sometimes? You know what I mean?
Yeah. He's very, well, he tends to be very nice and acts all sweet and jovial, and he likes to play this whole I'm a Southern gentleman angle that he does. I'm this poor, beat down crop share person. And that's not even his personality. He's not a good person. And people are still going to like him, and that's fine, and I really don't care. I'm just saying my piece at this point. I wouldn't have said anything. I haven't said anything for 30 years. I wouldn't have said anything if he hadn't dragged my name through the mud
He attacked
on
you.
YouTube.
He attacked
He
you.
attacked me, yes. And
Needlessly.
I had no idea. This video has been out for 3 months. I just happened to stumble across it, while I was surfing YouTube for other reasons. So, it was just amazing to me, like what he had to say. And it's like nothing could be further from the truth. I have no interest in Tony. I never want to talk to him again, ever. And I'm done. I'm so done with this whole situation.
Just,
I wouldn't have never said anything.
well, you know what? I'm glad you did. I think it highlights the real person that fans are going to interact with if they choose to in years to come, and promoters are going to choose to interact with in years to come. Sometimes the real person needs to come out of hiding, so to speak. But just
Yeah, well,
a couple of questions before we go. One that just popped into my head. After this horrible, horrible exchange that you, your mom, and even your little daughter had to endure at the hospital, did you have to deal with him at all again before you left and went home to Hawaii?
no,
That was the
no,
last
thank
you saw
goodness.
of him.
That was the last I
Good.
saw of him.
Good.
And I left to the airport from my friend's house, and that was it.
Wow.
And I was
And-
glad never to see him again.
And, I know you said that Tony had reached out to you after last week's episode. Was he angry, or what did he have to say about it?
He was angry at the fact that that I had given you guys the what did I give you guys?
The telephone call.
The telephone call, that's right. Yeah, he accused me of hating him, and that
Well.
he would have kicked my mother, or he would have lifted, his words, I would have lifted her if I had known that a long time ago, if I'd known how she felt. So,
You would have lifted her?
yeah, lifted her. So I don't know if he meant leave her or hurt her. I don't know, but he said lifted. I would have lifted her a long time ago if I had known, that was how she felt. So I have no idea. I can just go. I mean, he's illiterate, so it could have been spell check or his illiteracy. So I have no idea. But yeah, that was.
In my limited interactions with your mom, which basically, other than that one time I met her when I was in the 10th grade, just what a nice, kind, sweet lady, she came across to me. And for her to have to live 30 years of just such, what sounded like on the phone was just such unhappiness, for her to say, it didn't really bother me because I never really loved him. I mean, our lives are so short and we only get one run at it. For her to have spent so much time with someone she didn't really want to be with, it sounded like.
Well, I think there was two sides to my mother.
Mm-hmm.
And, on the one hand, she felt, okay, he was very annoying. For 30 years, we couldn't talk on the phone without him calling and trying to interrupt, or coming down, to her apartment to knock on the door, knowing that we were on the phone, because he could hear,
Right,
her
from
talking to
upstairs,
someone
right.
from upstairs. Walls were thin. And so every phone call we had, if he was around, there was always an interruption. So, he made himself a nuisance. He was a pest. He didn't want us to have a relationship. And, the other side of it, she didn't want to be alone.
And that
She
happens
was,
too. Loneliness is,
hmm
that's why they say, bars and pubs exist. They're the cure for loneliness.
yeah, she
And
put up with a lot not to be lonely.
she just picked the wrong day to go to that supermarket back in 1989, I guess, huh?
Yeah, very much so. Yeah, I wish that had never happened.
I wanted to treat this with as much respect as humanly possible, and I hope you feel I did. You
Yes,
seem like a
thank you.
very lovely person from our interactions we've had via email in this conversation right now. They say Virgos are sensitive people and they pick up on certain vibes, and you give off such a nice, positive vibe. I want to give you a platform right now. Tony has had the opportunity to say everything and anything he's wanted to say. Is there anything that you would like to say, a message that you would like to send to Tony, to your mom if she ever came across it where you haven't spoken to her? I just want to give you the floor to say anything you want to say, uninterrupted and unedited.
Well, for my mother, I'll always love her, no matter what. And yes, it hurt my feelings, the things that she had to say, but, things happen. And um, it's never going to change the fact that I love her. I was very angry, but I love her anyway. And as far as Tony is concerned, um, you know, he's gonna reap what he's sown.
And in a lot
So
of cases, I think he has. If you knew
yeah,
how much, from what I know, he's struggling, he hasn't had an easy existence, believe me. He needed your mom.
yeah, he needed
He
her,
really needed your
and
mom.
yeah, and he needed the story, and he needed the lies, and whether people buy into it anymore, I don't care. Um, I hope you know whoever they are, I hope they're happy being his fans or not being his fans. It's neither here nor there for me. I'm going to go back into my obscure life and enjoy my days and go to the beach
You have a beautiful
and
home.
to a beautiful home. And I don't care what happens with Tony anymore. I never really did. It was just my mother I was concerned about and her well being. And now she's safe. And I know she's safe. And, he can do what he wants, but he can't really hurt her anymore either. So, it's all worked out. I guess, sadly, in a strange way, I guess the stroke was probably the best thing that ever happened to her in a way.
Well, I can only hope, from how I feel, is that, at some point you and your mom communicate again on a regular basis, especially during these corona times when he can't go in and out of the hospital as he had
Hmm.
before, when she'd
Yeah.
have a little bit of privacy maybe to actually have a conversation with you the way she'd want to.
Yeah.
It's a real shame that you guys haven't spoken in so long, and I mean, maybe even the hospital could even just update you on what's going on with her. I'm
Yeah.
sure you
Yeah.
really want to know. That's your mom at the end of the day.
Yeah. Well, I'll probably give her a call and see how she's doing because, now that I know that the words that were coming out of her mouth weren't her own, that changes a lot for me.
And I'm sure that must really piss you off, to be fair, that it was put into her head again by him.
Yeah. Well,
Not
it
by
is.
her own fruition, by him choosing
Yeah.
to cause
But
trouble. I mean, I look at the stress and headaches and drama that he's created for us since February, and it pales in comparison to the sickness I feel in my stomach right now from what you've shared today. Just going back to the story when you brought your 2-year-old over and the story from the wedding day. I mean, this is someone I considered a friend. This is someone I opened my wallet to try and help pay his bills. This is someone that I had interact with my ex's kids, and this is
yeah.
him breaking a
Mhm.
12-year-old's puzzle and
Yeah.
masturbating in front of a 2-year-old and his stepdaughter. I,
Yeah.
I I'm sick to my stomach is the only way I can describe it right now. I question myself. I question myself. Again, as a professional wrestler, part of the job is, you're portraying a persona. And, I guess when it comes to the persona he wants to portray, when he wants to turn it on, he's very good at turning on the Tony Atlas persona.
Yes, he is. And he
And
always has been. Go ahead.
No, I feel like an idiot, to be honest,
Well,
that I didn't see through it.
well, people want to believe, like I said, it's the star factor. It's the act that he puts on. Nobody knows what goes on behind closed
Exactly.
doors.
Yep. We mentioned that earlier. Nobody knows
Yeah.
unless you live with them. The only
Yeah.
person that could probably tell that story better than you is your mom.
Yeah.
I always
Mhm.
found it interesting when I was a high school kid. I don't know if I went into too much detail about that in our emails, but I worked for a man named the Boston Bad Boy Tony Rumble, who passed away in his early 40s, and was very close with Tony for a long, long time. And then around 1997-ish, maybe early 1998, instead of having Tony on every show, nothing. It was like Tony vanished and fell off the face of the earth. And, I wanted to be a sponge. I wanted to learn this industry. So I didn't feel it was my place to question Tony as to what happened to Tony Atlas. But I always found it so strange, the two guys that were such good friends. I don't know if there was a falling out, to be honest with you. I don't know what ended the business relationship. I know when Tony died, at 44 years old, Tony didn't even come down for the wake. And, it was only a couple hours ride, but I know a lot of people were turned off to Tony Atlas because he didn't show up to Tony Rumble's funeral just to try and keep the Tonys straight. But boy, I can only send just positive thoughts to you and your mom and your daughter and your whole family. I hope at some point things work out where there is direct and open communication again. And I hope at some point, your mom can get healthy enough and get to the point where she can get the hell out of that Addams family like yellow house and, spend the rest of her golden years, however she can, in a beautiful place like where you are. I think that would be a nice ending. It's unfortunate it didn't happen before when Tony stole the $5,000. And, maybe she could have made that move. She seemed like, when we heard that phone call, she was kind of on the bubble about it.
Yeah. Yeah, she had been on the bubble about it for decades. And I had kept trying, but, it was just too late.
Well, the power of persuasion was living with her or above her or nearby her, I guess, at the end of the day, right?
Yeah.
Well, I have to say it has been an absolute pleasure to have you with us. Again, I wish we never had to do this episode. I wish the Tony Atlas that I thought was my friend for so long was that true human being, and there weren't all these stories that existed that no one really knew about. Is there anything you felt we left out? I just want to make sure we covered everything that you feel we should mention.
I think we've pretty much covered, most of it, all of it.
Okay.
Without getting, into my mother's personal side of it.
Right.
That's, her story, her feelings,
sure.
and I can't completely speak. I can just speak on what she has told me, but even that, is I don't want to get into any further,
right.
Things about what, how she felt, but, I think I've said enough.
Well, that's perfectly understandable. And I think this interview has been riveting to those that aren't involved, to someone that is, again, known Tony for so long. I almost feel dirty, I guess maybe is the word. You've had it in your head for 30 years and you've experienced it and you've lived it at different times. But to me, it's all new and it's just... Ugh.
Yeah.
Filth,
Yeah. So I apologize,
No,
for the
no.
graphic nature of everything, but it is what it is.
You deserve
And,
the chance to tell your story after what he said about you.
Well, I'm just glad to get it off my chest after 30 years and be done with it. And, I don't even want to deal with him or any of his drama anymore. Want no more
Well,
part of it.
I wish I could say the same. The way things have gone since February, I have a feeling on my end that's certainly not going to be the case. But I can only wish that you guys have the absolute best, happiest, healthiest life out in Hawaii, and that Monica can get out there once she's healthy enough to, get out of that facility that she's in right now and not go back to that Addams family, like, mansion that they're in. And, even the steps going in. I don't even know if I told you that. I almost broke my ankle with one of those stone steps that were broken. I don't know. He said he was going to make a ramp to try and get her in with a wheelchair. I would have loved to have seen what that ramp would look like, but, I don't want to, be comical in what's been a serious interview. But again, it's been really nice to talk to you. I feel like I made a new friend. If you ever have to come back to Maine for whatever reason and fly through Boston, make sure you stop through and say hello.
All right, I will do. Thank you very much.
All right, my friend. I hope we will continue to communicate via email. And again, my best to you and your family. Wrestling fans, again, this isn't something we wanted to do, but you know what? With the slander that Tony has put out there about us for the past 6 months when we did nothing but try and help the man, and what Tony's stepdaughter has explained about the past 31, 32 years, hopefully it has given you food for thought. If you were at least on the bubble, or maybe on the bubble now. Until we speak again, folks, you and yours be well. Again, just like the family, we hope you guys the best. I'm just a little out of it right now. I wasn't expecting this to become what it became, but you know what? Sometimes it's nice to know the truth. So good night from Boston. Talk to you soon. Bye-bye now.
Aloha.
Thank you for joining us. Please give the video a big thumbs up, leave us a comment, and subscribe to the channel to enjoy more great content. Don't forget, you can help keep wrestling legends working. Check out our eBay store and join the Boston Wrestling family at patreon.com/Boston Wrestling so we can produce more in-depth shoot interviews.